Great, welcome and thank you so much for joining us today for another installment of the research webinar series hosted by our team here at the Michigan Virtual Learning Research Institute, or MVLRI. The goal of MVLRI is to expand Michigan's capacity to support new learning models, engage in active research to inform new policies in online and blended learning, and strengthen the state's infrastructures for sharing best practices. MVLRI is a division of Michigan Virtual, a nonprofit organization whose mission is advancing K-12 education through digital learning, research, innovation, policy, and partnerships. Michigan Virtual's efforts include providing online courses to K-12 students across Michigan and the United States, as well as providing a variety of professional learning opportunities for educators focused on innovative educational practices such as blended learning, providing resources, products, and services to personalize learning options for their students and improve student achievement. So before we jump into today's presentation, I want to share our disclaimer. This webinar will be recorded and shared publicly. Consequently, anything shared during this webinar, including chat comments, could be shared publicly. This webinar may represent a presenter's or an attendee's personal views, opinions, conclusions, and other information which do not necessarily reflect those of Michigan Virtual and/or the Michigan Virtual Learning Research Institute, and are not given nor endorsed by Michigan Virtual or MVLRI unless otherwise specified. Now, I would like to take some time to introduce our esteemed guest who will be presenting today. Her name is Yining Zhang, and she recently graduated, congratulations, with her PhD in Educational Technology from Michigan State University. Her primary research interests focus on the design, development, and teaching of the engaging, collaborative, and interactive online learning communities that can generate deep, meaningful, and innovative learning. In addition, she also investigates the role of effective learning strategies and adaptive motivational profiles designed to maximize learning outcomes. And today she'll be talking to us about social presence and its relationship with learning outcomes. Yining, feel free to take on.
Thank you for introducing me to everyone. Hi everyone, this is Yining, so for today, my study will be talking about the social presence among credit recovery students. So this is part of the study from my dissertation. For my dissertation, I studied students' online learning by using the framework of self-regulated learning and also using the inquiry of community framework, the community of inquiry framework. So inspired by my dissertation study, I found out that social presence is actually a very important part for students to learn online. And I also found that credit recovery students and non-credit recovery students actually perform very differently in terms of their social presence. So today I want to talk more about this part. And let's start. Okay, so first some background information about K-12 online learning. Taking courses from virtual schools has become a popular trend in K-12 education in the US. And this graph shows a steady growth of K-12 students taking online courses through virtual schools. And in addition to this overall increase in enrollment in K-12 online learning, the number of US states providing it has also increased dramatically from 38 states in 2002 to all 50 states and the District of Columbia by 2011. And also some states such as Michigan, like Virginia, Alabama, and some other states, they have even included online courses among their high school graduation requirements. So under such explosive increase in K-12 online education, the quality of online learning has actually become a primary concern for students, for parents, for researchers, and also educators and policymakers. And some common challenges faced by online students included like feelings of isolation, like a disconnection from their peers and their instructors, and also less motivated to learn. And also we have found that there's a pretty high dropout rate and low academic achievement compared with learning in other settings. So to address all these issues, perhaps we should take a look at social presence, and perhaps a strong sense of social presence in online learning can help us to overcome these issues. So what is social presence? Rather than just focusing on one's feelings about himself or herself in a specific learning domain, social presence actually focuses on the feelings of the relationship with other people. And social presence refers to the ability of learners to project themselves socially and emotionally as real people into a community of learners. It refers to the degree to which the learner creates personal but purposeful relationships and developing some social bonds with others in his or her online learning context. So in an ideal situation, social presence they will help the learners to create open and comfortable learning environments so that students can feel free to interact with others. And social presence was actually found to be a very crucial component in online learning in the community of inquiry framework. And also, previous study has found that social presence have played as a vital role and had complex dynamics in the real world settings. And according to previous research, social presence contains three main aspects. They are open communication, effective expression, and group cohesion. So for open communication, it refers to the creation of an environment in which students are free to express their emotions, they're free to express their ideas so that they can collaborate with each other effectively. And this is because in order to get social presence, the students they must feel free and secure to express themselves openly. So such sense of trust established among students through communication and interaction is pretty like a prerequisite for building a learning community. And for the second aspect is effective expression. It means like whether students can express their emotions in the learning community. And for this part, actually, instructors, they can do a lot of things to facilitate effective expression. For example, the instructors can share their own stories, their own experiences, feelings, interests, and attitudes to make the students feel like they are talking to some real people. And also, those people are credible. Teachers can also use humor as a catalyst to foster the conversation and also to shorten the distance between teachers and students. And the third part is group cohesion. Group cohesion shows how a sense of group commitment can be built through activities. Once students work on group projects, they will sometimes develop a team identity. And when they present their group work to the class at large, they will keep such team identity. So by using activities or assignments that require group work, students can start to develop group cohesion. Okay, then what is about the relationship between social presence and self-efficacy? Um, so first, I want to say is that self-efficacy is a very important characteristics in learning. It's not only limited to online learning, but also like to learning in general. And self-efficacy reflects students' beliefs about one's capabilities to complete some specific learning task successfully. So self-efficacy does not really concern with the skills that one student has, but rather it concerns about the judgments of what one can do with whatever skills one has. And in online learning, self-efficacy has been hypothesized as a very important factor. And also, previous studies have found that a positive social presence can predict students' self-efficacy. And this is because self-efficacy actually reflects the degree of one person's self-analysis and also A student would usually make such analysis and reflection through social persuasion. So social persuasion are some kind of vicarious experiences that the learner gets from others' feedbacks. And previous studies have found that a higher sense of social community, a higher sense of social presence was associated with a higher confidence in learning, a higher self-efficacy, and social presence directly and positively predicted students' self-efficacy. So when using social presence as a predictor to predict students' learning outcomes, social presence is found to be significantly and positively correlated with different learning outcome variables, including learning satisfaction and perceived learning progress. Specifically, social presence is a very strong predictor of learning satisfaction. And actually, it's not surprising to find such relationship because a high-level social presence can help people to overcome the potential negative learning reactions by enabling students to build strong connections with the instructors, with the peers, reducing feelings of isolation, and also strengthening feelings of psychological connection and building a connected learning community. And in addition to the strong need for social presence in online learning, it's actually very important to look at a specific group of students in online learning, which is the students who take the course for credit recovery purposes. Because one feature of the existing K-12 online learning environment is its increasing use for credit recovery purposes. For example, students can take this as an opportunity to make up the courses that they have previously failed or they forgot to take or for some other reasons. And according to a report released by INACO recently, credit recovery has become a major reason for students to choose online learning. And the same report also indicated that more than 75% of US school districts, they offer their students the option of online credit recovery courses. Meantime, studies also show that credit recovery students are facing several challenges in online learning. For example, credit recovery students, they showed fewer and lower quality self-regulated skills. They showed lower motivations, and they also demonstrated lower academic performance compared with other students. So when looking at the need of a strong social presence for credit recovery students, it is believed that credit recovery students, they actually need a very strong sense of belonging during their online learning. Um, Previous studies have shown that in addition to purely academic considerations, credit recovery students actually they really want a very strong sense of social sense of belonging during their online learning. They have expressed a strong desire to be accepted and appreciated by their teachers, by their mentors, by their peers. And the credit recovery students who perceived high social connections with others were also likely to show more persistence in learning, and also they were likely to achieve better academic results by the end of their learning. And people also found that credit recovery students, they really show a very high desire to be accepted and to build connections with others during their online learning. So it's really necessary to distinguish carefully between credit recovery students and other students who took the online course that are not have this credit recovery purposes. And it's really important to understand how do credit recovery students perceive their online learning differently than the other students. Specifically, how do they differ when perceiving their interaction and communication in the online learning environment? How does their perception of communication related with some of the learning outcomes? So for this study, I am to answer the following four questions. What does social presence look like? what does self-efficacy look like, what does learning satisfaction, perceived progress look like, and what is the correlation between social presence and self-efficacy, what is the correlation between social presence and learning satisfaction, and what is the correlation between social presence and perceived progress between these two different groups of students. And the study was conducted at MVU during the spring semester in 2017. A total of 1461 MVU students participated in this study, and among these 1461 participants, 69.9% of them were female students and 29.8% of them were male students. And the instruments used in this study included the measurements of social presence. So originally, there are three aspects of social presence. As I said before, it included affective expression, open communication, and group cohesion. But since the measurements of group cohesion does not really fit with the context in this study, so we decided to remove that part and only measured these two dimensions of social presence. And we also included student self-efficacy, and it was pulled out from MSLQ, the Motivated Strategies for Learning questionnaire. We also asked about students' satisfaction and their perceived learning progress. And in addition, the survey asked about their gender, ethnicity, grade, and their reason to take the course, and also the subject they are taking from the institution. So here are some basic information about the participants. So as you can see from this graph, most of the participants, they were 12th graders, followed by 11th graders, 10th graders, 9th graders, 8th graders, and 7th graders. Okay, so this is the grade distribution of the participants. And then this graph shows how many subjects that our students are enrolled in. So it included foreign languages. So the majority of the students were enrolled in this subject. And we also have students taking science classes, social science classes, math classes, and English classes, and also some other subjects. So this is the distribution of credit recovery students versus non-credit recovery students. As you can see, the majority of the participants were non-credit recovery students, which is 92.8% of them are non-credit recovery students, and only 87 participants, which is 6% of entire participants were credit recovery students. So this table shows the distribution of students across different grades. So you can see especially for the credit recovery students, most of them are the upper level. They are 12th graders, 11th graders, and 10th graders. And the next table shows how many credit recovery students are enrolled in different subjects. And we can find 27 credit recovery students who were enrolled in foreign language courses, and 17 credit recovery students were enrolled in some other subjects. And then we also have 14 students in math and 13 students in science, and 8 in English, and also 8 in social science studies. Okay, so when looking at, so first, I want to show you how the two groups of students, they score differently in terms of their social presence. And for social presence, it was measured based on two different dimensions. One is affective expression and the other is open communication. Okay, so for affective expression, so there are 3 items for affective expression. The first one is I feel comfortable interacting with others in the online course. The second is I feel comfortable participating in the course activities. And the third item is I felt comfortable conversing through the online medium. And the green color, oh, I saw a question from Susan. These were self-paced courses. These were all self-paced courses. So the green color represents non-credit recovery students. Okay, to answer Susan's another question, so the students, I think the number one, like most of the time they would communicate with their teachers. They would either emailing with their teachers or like send messages. And most of the time that was the teachers who initiated such dialogues. Okay, and the green color represents non-credit recovery students, and orange color represents the credit recovery students. And so for all the three different items, we can find that the credit recovery student, which is the orange color, they showed significantly lower social presence on all three subscales of affective expression compared with non-credit recovery students. And this graph shows the difference on their scores on open communication. So there are three items for open communication. The first one is online communication is an excellent medium for me for social interaction. And the second is I never feel isolated in this course. And the third is I have a sense of belonging in this course. And again, this graph shows that credit recovery students show significantly lower social presence on all three subscales of open communication compared with non-credit recovery students. And especially we can see that for this one, for the first item, online communication is an excellent medium for me for social interaction. Um, both credit recovery and non-credit, yes, the scale is from 1 to 5. Sorry, I forgot to mention that. And with 5 being the highest and 1 being the lowest. And we can, okay, and we can see that both students, they scored pretty low on the first item of open communication. Yeah, but overall, credit recovery students, they show significantly lower scores on all these items for social presence. And in terms of self-efficacy, again, we have 4 items to measure self-efficacy, also from 1 to 5. We have the first one is I'm certain I can master the skills being taught in the class. The second item is I expect to do well in the class. The third is I'm confident I can do an excellent job in this course. And the last one is I believe I will receive an excellent grade in this class. So again, credit recovery students, they scored significantly lower on all the subscales of self-efficacy. And when we look at learning outcomes, we used perceived progress and learning satisfaction. And I also want to say is that we do have collected students' final grade, but when I did the analysis, I did not have final grade at hand. So I do not have this right now in this study, but I will definitely include that for my future publications or future analysis. So right now, learning outcomes, I only included students' perceived learning satisfaction and their perceived progress. And again, credit recovery students, they showed significantly lower scores on their learning satisfaction and their perceived progress in online learning. And then I look at the correlations between social presence and self-efficacy between these two groups of students. And the green one is for the non-credit recovery students, and the orange one is the credit recovery students. So the correlation for non-credit recovery students is 0.46, and for credit recovery students is 0.69. So it means that social presence has a significant higher correlation with self-efficacy for credit recovery students compared with non-credit recovery students. And also, when correlating social presence with satisfaction, these two graphs show that the correlation between social presence and learning satisfaction is 0.60 for non-credit recovery students and 0.78 for credit recovery students. And also, the coefficient difference is significant. And the last correlation analysis is between social presence and their perceived learning progress. And the correlation is 0.50 for non-credit recovery students and 0.71 for credit recovery students. So in summation, social presence showed significantly higher correlations with self-efficacy, with learning satisfaction, with perceived progress among credit recovery students than among other students who took the course not for credit recovery purposes. So for example, when having a same level of social presence, a credit recovery student, they would feel even more confident about his or her learning compared with a non-credit recovery student. And also a credit recovery student would feel even more satisfied and would perceive to having more progress compared with other students. So these results suggested that a high social presence is particularly important for credit recovery students in terms of promoting their learning self-efficacy, in terms of increasing their learning satisfaction, and increasing their perceived progress. So in this study, we were really interested in looking at social presence and its relations with other learning variables between credit recovery students and non-credit recovery students. And the social presence described in this study refers to the degree to which learners feel connected to others. And not surprisingly, credit recovery students, they showed lower social presence on all aspects of measured items and compared with non-credit recovery students. And when conducting the correlation studies, we found that social presence is even more important for credit recovery students as one feeling a high sense of social presence, a credit recovery student, they would benefit more. They would show stronger self-efficacy. They would more satisfied with the course, and they would also show higher perceived progress. So they really benefit more compared with non-credit recovery students. So because why this happens? So to explain this, this is because credit recovery students they are facing a variety of problems, such as they're having low academic achievement, they demonstrating low learning motivations, then some of them also have very limited internet access in their day-to-day schooling. So giving them a really strong sense of belonging and providing them such reassurance that they're not isolated, they have been cared by someone else in their online learning can be even more important to them than to other people. And indeed, such actual attention and actual support may play a vital role in making them feel that they can succeed in online learning. So, when credit recovery students in online learning they experience such strong sense of belonging, they will likely to be more confident. They will likely to be more satisfied with their learning compared with non-credit recovery students. And based on our findings, it's therefore important for practitioners to design and to implement a learning environment with very strong social presence when it's expected to serve a high proportion of credit recovery students. And here are some tips to design a course with high social presence. And the first would be to support a more collaborative and supportive learning community to let students feel that they are not isolated online. And the second one is to establish relationships of trust with students. to make them feel like they are supported. And also, the teachers may want to convey motivational information when interacting with students to establish their self-efficacy, to make them believe that they can succeed in online learning. And also, teachers may create various types of learner-learner interactions, such as ice-breaking activities like synchronous or asynchronous discussions, or let them work on group projects to foster an active learning environment. In addition, teachers can also schedule one-on-one meetings to provide students with individualized support and make students feel like teachers really care about each individual intellectual and psychological growth during their online learning. Okay, so yeah, so this is my study. And I'm really looking forward to hearing your feedback and any comments, questions. Um, yeah, are welcome. Yeah, Zhang asked a question about the heavily unbalanced between credit recovery students and non-credit recovery students. And I see this is one of the limitations of this study because I only had 87 credit recovery students in this study, and the majority of them are non-credit recovery students. Um, I I think this is really a limitation because it's quite unbalanced, um, and I'm not sure whether this distribution reflects the real picture of the MVU enrollment. But I do acknowledge that it could be biased because these two different students are not quite balanced.
So can I ask a question? Actually, two questions. I thought this was really fascinating, and I'm really interested in credit recovery students and what can be done for them. So one is a question, in my limited experience, there are two types of credit recovery students, and one is the type that you described, but the other is the type that takes the course to get ahead. And when I looked at that list of courses that you showed, it struck me that some of them might be the ones who are trying to get ahead, and that in a sense they are more like the non-credit recovery students, and therefore you may be undermining, sort of reducing your argument a little bit. In other words, if you just focused on the genuine catch-up credit recovery students, you might even have a stronger correlation. And I don't know if you could separate them out. I think one way would be to look at early grades, for instance. Because I know when we were looking at these, we looked at some credit recovery students who just zipped through. So that's one question. I wonder about your thoughts on that. And then let me ask the other one, and then I can turn off my mic. It strikes me that you're talking more about teacher presence than social presence. And the lesson here is more about teaching for these self-paced courses, and teacher interaction with students than it is about student-student interaction. But that's just from what you said. So I'm wondering if you had a measure other than any measure of how much presence there actually was.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you for these two questions. So to answer your first question, so in my questionnaire, I asked students like whether you are taking this course just for credit recovery. So I think the participants, those students that are categorized as credit recovery in this study, they are those students with some problems in learning and they need like extra help. I think are those like real credit recovery students. Because I know there are also some other students who took this course because it's required, or because it's elective and they just want to take the course because they're interested in it, or their local school do not offer such courses, but they do not belong to this category.
Okay, so that's good, because when you have 17 of the students in other subjects, you really do wonder what's going on there.
Yeah, I
Okay, so
wish
that's
I could. I wish I could like be more specific to list more subjects when designing this research, because I didn't expect that there are like such a large proportion of students who are enrolling in those called other subjects. And if like Kristen or like Catherine, could you like jump
no,
in
and
and say
I didn't.
how
I'm
this?
amazed at this list because I had sort of assumed most of them would be math and English, but 27 of them, the biggest group was in foreign languages. I just think that's
Yeah.
fascinating.
And also not quite sure about like what other subjects actually include.
I mean, this is not,
Yeah.
it does not mirror Michigan Virtual's enrollments in credit recovery.
Mhm.
I don't think. Not sure. Catherine or
Yeah, I
Kristen or
was
somebody.
also, yeah. Or
So
Janga, do
just for
you?
a little bit of background information, I think some of this is also, yeah, Gemma will probably be jumping in pretty soon via chat or if you want to grab the mic, Gemma. But we also had just started, I think it was last year, was the pilot for a credit recovery program. So this was something new, and so we have a different representation there as well, based on that new program that we put into place. So that could be part of it as well. But Gemma, if you want to jump in and chat about what you found over the last, 4 reports that you've done on.
Yeah, yes. I think the credit recovery sample in this study is pretty much representative of Michigan virtual schools credit recovery enrollment, because 6% is a little bit higher than Michigan virtual schools enrollment pattern, but it's pretty much representative. But as what Susan brought up, yes, Susan, you are right. And Michigan virtual schools enrollment patterns in terms of the credit recovery enrollment across courses. English language literature and mathematics are one of top courses that those students enrolled in.
Right. I was just concerned that you might be undercutting your own argument if you have a mixed bag. That's why I asked. You might strengthen your argument if you really focused on the struggling students. That was my point. So what about the teacher presence versus social presence?
So the social, so for the community of inquiry framework, it says that there are 3 very important presences in online learning. One is teaching presence, one is social presence, and the other is cognitive presence. And so the questionnaire asked all of these presences, and but for this study, I only show the relationship of social presence and some learning variables. And my understanding is that for this context, most of the social interactions or the establishment of social presence is like, I should say, is facilitated from the instructor's side. Because as far as I know, there are not too many like group work opportunity for students to do, because the majority of the courses are self-paced courses. So it's not very possible for students to work in groups. And I don't think a lot of courses offer this opportunity for students to interact with their peers or to do some group activities together. So for the social presence in this context, I think it really rely heavily on the social presence established between a teacher and a student. So there are a lot of things that a teacher can do to foster such social presence, and it's different from teaching presence. So my understanding of teaching presence is more content based. It's more about how a teacher design a course, deliver a course, and facilitate the teaching. So it's more about content learning. And for the social presence, it's more about building the social relationship and getting students to have a sense of like I'm talking to a real person in this online learning. Not sure if I answered your question.
You did, although I had thought that teaching presence was the social component, not the content component. But I have to go back and look at the COI framework. I didn't think that the teaching presence was about content. I thought it was about presence. And so what you're really describing is more teaching presence than social presence, which I had understood to be student-student. But I would have to go back and look. I just, let's see, what is this? 4 citations for social presence, but none for, all right, so that's a sort of slightly different question. But I think if you're going to talk about social presence, you need to tell us what it is, since there is so little in these, as you pointed out, in these courses. And I think your argument is arguing for more teacher-student interaction. But I could be wrong. I mean, I'm not. I know the scale that you used. I'm just wondering if you were really asking about, if they were really responding about student-student interaction, and whether they weren't really responding about interactions with the teacher. That's all.
So these are the items that I use to measure social presence, and they are from the COI questionnaire. Yeah, so it included effective expression and open communication. And yeah, I think
You know, there was any of that, right? You don't really know that there was any.
Wasn't what?
You don't know that there was. Well, you don't know there was interaction with others.
Yeah, so right, this one, as I felt comfortable interacting with others.
Right. Well, I just looked up teaching presence, and I think I don't know. I'm concerned about social presence is talking about community. Teaching presence, I think you're sort of, I take your point. I'm reading it here, is the design, facilitation, and direction of cognitive and social processes for the purposes of realizing personally meaningful and educationally worthwhile learning outcomes. So, you know, it's a questionable which is social and which is cognitive. I don't know, just something to think about.
Right. So for the teaching presence, I asked 3 different aspects. One is the design of the and the implementation of the course. The second is teachers' direct instruction, and the third is teachers' facilitation of the course. So that is more based on like content related questions. And
how much direct instruction is there? Is there direct instruction?
3 to 4 items. Yeah, there is direct instructions.
Okay.
And to answer Gemma's question, thank you, Kristen. I found 4 citations for credit recovery and social presence, but none for credit recovery characteristics and learning motivation. I actually there's very little studies out there specifically talk about credit recovery students SRL skills or their learning motivation. Um, so that is what I want to contribute for the entire field. Is I also asked about their self-regulated learning in my questionnaire, but that's not the focus of this study. But I do find out that these two group of students, they demonstrated very different motivations and also self-regulated learning skills.
I just found your statement from your slide. I think a third or fourth slide when you talked about the previous research. So you mentioned this year credit recovery students tended to have some challenges in terms of SLS skills and learning motivation. So I thought you might have some references for those arguments. Okay, thank you.
So I can provide you with some names after this webinar. I'm not
All
saying
right.
like they're like no out there, but they're like very, very little. And also for those references, what I did is I mostly investigate among like credit recovery students, now like doing a comparison between credit recovery students and other non-credit recovery students. I think that is because a lot of these studies, they studied on those like credit recovery programs. So all the participants were from one single credit recovery program. So there's no such possibility for doing a direct comparison.
Okay.
I
Thank you.
do have a question, but I want to make sure if Amy, Andrew, or Susan, Amy, it's good to see you in here. If you guys have any questions for Yining, I'll wait until you guys ask yours.
Yeah, I'll go ahead and ask a question. This is Andrew. I was wondering if you could discuss whether or not you believe that status, I guess, as a credit recovery, non-credit recovery student affects in any way the accuracy of the self-reporting of perceived learning, or in this context, if that makes sense.
Okay, so can I like interpret your question in this way? Like these two group of students, they may like report this in a different way, or they may perceive the question in the survey in a different way. Is that what you're asking?
Yes, but also just for instance, if you can go to the slide with, I think it
Which slide?
was learning outcomes.
Learning outcomes. Okay. This
Right.
one?
So if you look at like perceived progress, I was just wondering if you could discuss a little bit the chance you think that someone's status as a non or a credit recovery student actually could impair their ability to be accurate, make accurate appraisals of their actual progress. So like, assuming they made progress, or even if they didn't make progress, your status as a recovery student, was this accurate? Was this an accurate actual appraisal or evaluation of your actual progress? And if it isn't, um, could that give us a misleading correlation?
Mm-hmm. So I also, okay, yeah, I got what you mean. So I also collected their final grades, but that's like several months after the collection of this data, the self-perceived data. And when I did this analysis, they're not included in it. But from what I did based on my previous studies, I found that their final grades are very highly correlated with the perceived progress. So I think that the perceived progress can reflect their real academic achievement.
Do you think that
When in the semester did they take the instrument?
It's in the middle of the semester.
Okay. So that would be the point at which to compare the perceived. I think it's a really interesting question, because this is all about
Yeah,
self-perception.
yes, my question
yeah.
really is,
So
you assume that there is some progress or even no progress. I'm wondering how much your actual status as a one student or another cognitive differences, if that actually impairs your ability to make an accurate appraisal of what progress is. So, or if you can make the assumption, and I'm going to make it now, that a credit recovery failed a course or has a history of past academic, low academic achievement, and if they did, let's say, make a lot of progress, but they perceive that progress to be no progress, is that something that could skew the results, or if anyone wants to jump in and help me with that question?
Mm, so I think I have also considered about that. But by asking the perceived progress, I'm really that really asks about the perceived progress. So I think everybody could interpret this in a different way. And also that's a reflection of like how our perceptions varies on this question. And I also thought about like the timing issue of asking this question. So the survey was sent out to them like at the middle, but like towards the middle and the end, like in the middle between the middle and the end of the semester. So I think at that time they should have already had like a general idea of how much they have already learned throughout this semester. This is not like at the beginning of the semester and they have no idea at all and answer this question.
Okay, yeah, thank you.
I know that Amy, I see that you're having microphone issues. Did you want to try using your mic now? Okay, it doesn't seem to be working. I'm so sorry. If you do have a question, please put it into the chat box. Yining, I'll go ahead and ask my question now since we have about 3 or 4 minutes. I would like to know, and I know that you alluded to a few things that you would like to kind of dig deeper on as you were going through your presentation, but one of the things I always ask is, what kind of avenues do you see yourself going down as you continue this line of research? What kind of topics are you really passionate about as you move forward?
Okay, thanks for asking this really big question, and it's a really important question to think, I think. So what actually made me interested in looking at social presence is from my dissertation, I did a comparison between these two groups of students, and using SEM, I built up a model that integrated both self-regulated learning and community of inquiry framework. And I found out that there are several passes that show like a significant difference between the two groups of students, and the social presence is one of those passes. So this made me want to look at how the students really look differently in terms of their social presence, and how social presence could be related with some different other variables. And then the results show that actually, I have never expected such result, because the results show that the social presence is even like more important for credit recovery students. The correlation is significantly higher for credit recovery students. This is something I've not expected before. So I think the next step would be looking at some like specific strategies or like activities that teacher used and targeted on credit recovery students. Is like some interventions and see how this could really help credit recovery students to improve their social presence.
Great, thank you so much for sharing that. And it looks like so Amy is one of the researchers doing a lot of work in social presence. So she's mentioning that she'll be at OLC next week. I will too, and I'll send an invite to you for dinner if you're interested. I think we're coming up on the end. Is there any last questions? Maybe one last question if anybody's interested in sharing. Okay. It looks like you're off the hook for questioning, Yining. So thank you so much again for taking your time to present your very important work to move our field forward. And congratulations again on your graduation. We'll be all rooting for you from afar as you walk across the stage. So here I'm going to go ahead and move us down here. Let's see. And Yining, if you could put your email address where people can get a hold of you if they'd like to learn more or get in touch with you, that would be great. So here are a couple ways that you can get involved with us at MVLRI and share your important work that you're doing with the field. We have a podcast series called Virtual Viewpoints that is hosted by our very own Justin Bruno. If you have work to share with the field, please feel free to reach out to Justin to schedule a podcast recording. And also we have the guest blogger program where you can write up your work in a short blog post and share that with the community as well. We do have another webinar coming up next week on November 15th, 2 p.m. We'll be talking about our teacher guide. Becky Parks was one of the authors on that, as well as our own Becky Stimson, who is here. Thank you, Becky. And there's the login information for that as well. And of course, if you would like to contact us, here's all of our contact information, and another big shout out to Yining as she finishes up her work at Michigan State and moves on to bigger and better things. And if you do have another email address once you leave Michigan State, please feel free to include that as well, Yining. Thank you so much, everyone, and have a great rest of your day.
Thank you.
Thank you, Catherine. Thank you, everyone.